Theresa May takes the lead, Fox falls and Crabb steps aside. In a fast-paced race for number 10, it's suddenly all about who could be in second place, Leadsom or Gove. Meanwhile, as the pound plummets again, the Bank of England's plan for Brexit Britain. Also on News at 10 tonight, the deal's off. Junior doctors say no to their new contract. Iraq's cruel and lasting legacy. After 7 long years, Sir John Chilcot prepares the path for his report tomorrow.
It will not be possible in future to engage in a military or indeed a diplomatic endeavour on such a scale and of such gravity without really careful challenge, analysis and assessment.
And not in their wildest dreams, Wales prepare their pitch against Portugal.
This is ITV News at 10 with Julie Etchingham.
Good evening. And then there were 3. The contest to become the next Conservative leader and Prime Minister suddenly moved up a gear this evening. We will now know which 2 candidates will be put to party members after the next round of voting on Thursday. One is bound to be Theresa May, not just because she polled half of all the votes cast by Conservative MPs in today's first round, but Liam Fox, who was eliminated, and Stephen Crabb, who pulled out of the race this evening, both said they would be backing her, which leaves the real fight to get on the ballot paper alongside her between Andrea Leadsom and Michael Gove.
6:30 tonight inside one of Parliament's magisterial committee rooms, the moment of truth for Tory MPs vying to succeed David Cameron as Conservative leader and our Prime Minister.
Returning officer for the Conservative Party leadership election 2016. These are the relevant figures. The number of electors was 330. The number of votes cast was 329, and the number of spoiled papers was 0. The candidates and their votes cast in alphabetical order were as follows: Stephen Crabb, 34; Dr. Liam Fox, 16; Michael Gove, 48; Andrea Leadsom, 66; Theresa May, 165. Therefore, Dr. Liam Fox, having the lowest number of votes, has been eliminated from the ballot.
And here was the first round loser telling us where he would be casting his vote in the next round.
I've decided to give my support to Theresa May. I intend to work closely with her to campaign for her, and I'm sure she'll be a very fine Prime Minister of this country. Thank you very much.
Now, the Young Work and Pension Secretary didn't have to pull out.
And I'm going to go for a drink.
But he was so far behind the other 3 that he chucked in the towel.
What I would say, and what has informed the decision that I've taken tonight, is that in the national interest there is a need for a new Prime Minister, a new party leader in place as quickly as possible. That's why I've decided not to prolong the leadership contest from my own perspective, even though I could have fought on for at least another round. And I think it's for the other candidates now to really reflect on their positions and whether they want to kind of drag out this contest or whether they recognise, like I do, that Theresa May is the only candidate now in a position to unite our party.
And what about the Justice Minister, who made himself so unpopular with many colleagues by blowing up Boris Johnson's tilt for the top job?
I hope that in the days to come, I'll be able to convince my colleagues that I should be one of the candidates that Conservative Party members can choose from, because I think that the message I have of optimism and hope about Britain's bright future outside the European Union is one that is shared by many Conservative members and voters.
Andrea Leadsom ahead of Gove and looking set to be the main challenger to Theresa May.
Well, I think a May-Leadsom final, a runoff between 2 women, would be really, really exciting. And I think the party membership are really interested in that as well. They're very different candidates. Andrea is very much focused on getting the economy going. She's obviously got a huge amount of expertise on Europe, and she's also a tremendous social reformer as well. So I think it'll be a really amazing contest.
One of May's ministerial backers, Amber Rudd, but come Thursday night, the leadership contest moves from MPs to 150,000 Tory members. who is Theresa May most frightened of facing in the final runoff?
Well, the great thing about Theresa is she's not frightened of anybody. So whoever it is, I'm sure she'll attack it and be confident about the future.
Hours in politics, more action-packed than years. A new Tory leader and PM coming very soon. Possibly Andrea Leadsom, probably Theresa May.
So the clock ticking, Robert's live in Westminster tonight. How are you reading it ahead of Thursday then, Robert?
Well, it's been one of those amazing days in the place behind me when reputations have been made and lost. Tonight, it's pretty clear that Theresa May will go onto the ballot of Tory party members. She got half the votes of Tory MPs in this first round. She will triumph again on Thursday night. And I would argue that with Stephen Crabb and Liam Fox both tonight coming out for her, that makes it almost impossible for Gove to make up the ground, and therefore I think Leadsom will come in second place on Thursday night and will also be on that ballot of Tory members.
And then it's over to the party membership, and where next from there, do you think, Robert?
Well, it will be a fascinating contest. We would know at that point we're going to have a woman Prime Minister, the first since Margaret Thatcher. Andrea Leadsom is, although not very experienced, popular with those who voted or wanted us to leave the EU. But I think a decisive thing happened tonight. Liam Fox, a very respected campaigner for leaving the EU, did not back her. He backed the Home Secretary, Theresa May, and I think that therefore means she must now be the favourite to be our next Prime Minister.
So there's some sort of clarifications now coming forward in the Tory race, Robert.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, what about Labour?
Labour still as murky as ever. Still this extraordinary split between Labour MPs and their leader, Jeremy Corbyn. We've seen Tom Watson today talking to Len McCluskey, the really powerful union backer of the Labour Party, trying to persuade him and other union leaders to drop Jeremy Corbyn, to allow a contest for a new leader where Jeremy Corbyn would not be on the ballot paper. I have to say right now, no sign of any kind of movement by the union leaders away from Corbyn. My own view is there will be a contest, but Corbyn will be in that race, and I suspect he may well win that race.
OK, Robert, thank you very much indeed. And staying with all things Brexit, there was more of I told you so from the Governor of the Bank of England today about the effects of the vote to leave the EU. The risks are crystallising, Mark Carney said, but he made clear he was a man with a plan to contain the economic shock. He's going to allow banks to lend more of the money they had put aside to guard against collapse. So far, so good, maybe. But the pound hit its lowest level against the dollar for 31 years.
Britain's banks helped cause the last recession. Now the hope is they can protect us from another one. We were warned that there were risks to leaving the EU. The Bank of England says those risks have begun to crystallise. Interest rates are likely to be cut. And today, the rules on bank capital were relaxed to encourage lending despite the uncertainty.
When combined with the already strong balance sheets of UK banks, today's action means that those UK households and businesses who want to seize viable opportunities in a post-referendum world can be confident that they will be supported by the financial system.
Right on cue, the heads of Britain's banks posed with the Chancellor and declared business as usual. But not everything is as it should be. In the last 24 hours, Standard Life, Aviva and M&G have stopped investors pulling money out of 3 commercial property funds. The funds own several hundred properties, including warehouses in Wales, shopping centres in Manchester and supermarkets in Kettering. Concern that property prices may be about to fall hit the share prices of Britain's biggest house builders today, and the pound fell to another low against the dollar. The Bank of England believes that Britain's decision to leave the EU means we now face an economic shock of as yet unknown scale, which is obviously unsettling, but the point is the bank is taking action to contain it. And Mark Carney was emphasising the positive today. A weak pound also offers opportunity to Britain's exporters. And he's clearly of the view that our banks are strong enough to weather whatever happens next. This economist campaigned for Britain to leave the EU. He argued there would be an economic price, but that it would be small and worth paying.
I expect there to be a temporary near-term hit, but not a recession. So people should not panic and they should have a bit more confidence about what lies ahead. But we shouldn't underestimate the near-term challenge.
Britain is in political crisis, but this is not an economic crisis, not yet. In adversity, banks will keep the credit flowing to customers. It remains to be seen how keen they are to borrow. Joel Hills, News at 10.
Now, after everything that has happened in the last couple of weeks, the row over new contracts for junior doctors in England seems like something from a different age. It all seemed to have been sorted out. Anyway, the Doctors' Union recommended a deal from the government back in May. But the junior doctors themselves had other ideas. They have rejected the deal, and it wasn't even close, 58% to 42%. The union negotiator who recommended the deal did what everyone else seems to be doing. He resigned. So what happens now?
Just 2 months ago, both sides dared to hope all this was behind them. Instead, what lies ahead are fresh recriminations and worry. After junior doctors rejected an offer their own leader described back then as the only way forward. He's resigned, but the deal is off. A decision one junior doctor told me wasn't an easy one. Why was it a no for you?
For me, personally, some of that finer detail in protecting staff, working hours, and ensuring that we try and minimise the staff shortages and the loss of staff that we're seeing, particularly in accident emergencies around the country. It just wasn't there yet.
In all, 58% of the British Medical Association's junior doctors rejected the deal, but only 2/3 of those balloted actually voted, making it a much weaker mandate than the 98% who backed the strikes last year. For the 6,000 staff due to start on new rotas in August, there is now only uncertainty. Yet it seems many junior doctors accepted the new deal on weekend conditions was an improvement on the government's first offer, with Saturdays and Sundays attracting premium pay if they work at least 7 weekends a year. Most do a lot more. But it wasn't enough, to the Health Secretary's palpable disbelief.
They sat around the table and they negotiated a deal which they said was a good deal, and that's now been rejected by the BMA membership, and it makes it very difficult for us as a government to know who we should negotiate with, or indeed whether there's any point in having these negotiations.
It's a desperate blow for England's already overstretched hospitals. In Milton Keynes yesterday, they had their busiest day ever in A&E, and although there are no immediate plans for strike action, the fear is there could be more.
We need to make sure that this contract resolution comes through as quickly as possible. We can't rely on the goodwill of all of the teams forever. We need to get this sorted out, and we need to get it sorted out quickly.
With all the signs suggesting the government will impose the contract, the question now is how much fight the doctors have left. Rachel Younger, News at 10.
When the inquiry into the Iraq war was first announced, the then Prime Minister Gordon Brown said it would take about a year. Tomorrow morning, 7 years on, Sir John Chilcot will publish his findings into the reasons Britain went to war. His conclusions will be pored over by service families who lost loved ones and by those involved in the decision-making. Sir John says his aim is to make sure the same mistakes are not made again.
The invasion of Iraq in 2003 has been described as the most politically divisive and internationally controversial war in modern British history. 179 British service personnel died in Iraq. The Chilcot inquiry was set up to provide a clear and reliable account of what happened. Ahead of its release tomorrow morning, the man at the head of it said more than anything he hoped his report would make sure nothing like Iraq would ever happen again.
The main expectation that I have is that it will not be possible in future to engage in a military or indeed a diplomatic endeavour on such a scale and of such gravity without really careful challenge, analysis and assessment and collective political judgment being applied to it.
The report is expected to heavily criticise the intelligence provided in the run-up to the war in 2003. Tony Blair's government is also likely to come up for criticism for the way it presented the case for war. The army's failure to bring stability to its southern area of control around Basra will also be criticised, and the planning for its withdrawal in 2009. But perhaps most importantly, it will not rule on the question of the legality of the war itself.
No regrets. Responsibility, but not a regret for removing Saddam Hussein.
He's already taken key testimony from the man who will forever be associated with the Iraq War. Many who served there say whatever Chilcot's findings, Iraq will be Blair's legacy.
It still remains difficult now to talk about it and say I was involved in the invasion of Iraq, because it's toxic. It's a toxic legacy of Tony Blair.
7 years and £10 million later, tonight the final preparations are being made for the release of the report into the war we can never forget. Raghi Omar, News at 10.
And if one incident during the time British forces were in Iraq came to symbolise the military shortcomings of the invasion and its lasting legacy for the country's people, it was the deaths of 6 members of the Army's Royal Military Police, the Red Caps. The group were cornered by locals in Mujar al-Kabir near Basra in June 2003 before being killed. The sight of their coffins being returned to the UK, one of the most haunting images of the conflict. One of those who died was Lance Corporal Thomas Keyes. His father, Reg, became a central figure of the anti-Iraq war campaign, even standing against Tony Blair in the 2005 general election. Now, the events of that fateful day will form part of history's judgment on the Iraq war.
The road into Mujar al-Kabir is adorned with posters of the dead, martyrs not of the insurgency against the British, but of a more recent conflict, the fight against ISIS. This is a deeply conservative tribal society. We are the first British people to come here for years, perhaps since the British Army left. Ali Majamez is typical of the men here, bitter and still seething at the lack of planning and the collapse of Iraqi society. How much anger is there still in this area towards the British? He says there's an anger that I cannot describe. Everyone has a hatred towards the British because of their behaviour. Many people were killed, many were injured, many women became widows. What happened here is symbolic of the wider failures in Iraq. The town's police station was the scene of an infamous incident. It was riddled with bullets after 6 British Royal Military Police made their last stand against a mob of 400. The tragedy exemplified the poor equipment, backup and planning that dogged the British deployment in Iraq. Karim Hashim shows where the fighting started after tensions boiled over between British paratroopers and local tribesmen. He describes how after the invasion, Iraq and the town faced a security vacuum, how he tried to warn the Red Caps of the trouble and the approaching mob. The bloodshed that followed in the town was a microcosm of the wider war. Both sides lost as liberation gave way to insurgency. 13 years on here in Mujar al-Kabir, there is still a boiling sense of anger towards the British Army and Tony Blair in particular. Abdul Wahid's son was shot on the same day as the 6 RMPs, contributing to the fury of the mob. I'm against the killing of British soldiers, he says, but my son was killed for nothing. He didn't do anything. There's still raw grief here at a war that's as controversial in Iraq as it is in Britain. Dan Rivers, News at 10, Mujar al-Kabir, Iraq.
And of course we'll have full coverage of the report, its findings and its possible consequences on tomorrow night's programme. In the warped hierarchy of the so-called Islamic State, Ain Davis, originally from London, is believed to be near the top. Back in February, ITV News revealed that he was one of the 4 Britons, together with the man known as Jihadi John, who were responsible for beheading hostages, the Beatles they were called because of their British accents. Now Davis is about to go on trial, allegedly the most senior member of Islamic State to do so. He's due in court in Turkey in a fortnight, but it wasn't clear what the charges were. Now ITV News has got hold of Turkish court documents which reveal details of the prosecution case.
We're on Turkey's southern coast, a private estate on the Marmara Sea near Istanbul. This is where 4 British terrorism suspects were detained in November. Ain Davis was one of them, a former tube driver now facing the most serious allegation of IS terrorism ever put to a British citizen in court. During interrogation, he was asked to explain this image, taken in Syria, published online. Was this evidence that he's a senior IS commander? Secret court papers we've unearthed reveal he absolutely denied being a member of the terrorist organization, but he is considered to be in charge of Daesh or IS, and he's accused of going to Istanbul to arrange a terrorist attack. He says he returned to Turkey when he witnessed the wrongdoings that were going on in Syria. We tracked down a friend who spent time with him there and recalled a gentle man enticed by extremism.
Is Ain a jihadist?
He was ideologically, at the time I met him, he hadn't joined ISIS yet. But he was ideologically a jihadist. No one denies that.
Earlier this year, we revealed Ain Davis's role alongside friends Alexei Koti and Mohammed Emwazi in an IS gang called the Beatles.
The blood of David Haynes was on your hands, Cameron.
Emwazi, known as Jihadi John, was killed by a drone the week of Davis's arrest. Koti was the third member. He travelled to Syria from the same neighbourhood. Here's his dating profile appealing for a wife to travel with him. But court files say Davis told detectives that the person known as Jihadi John was not his friend, that he only used to pray in the same mosque with him, that they had not seen each other for a long time. He said that the news which portrayed him as being in charge of the prison where hostages were kept did not reflect the truth. The court papers revealed that Ain Davis had only been in Istanbul for 4 days when he was arrested, but investigators had been studying 6 months of his phone records. Now he's here inside one of the highest security prisons in Turkey, awaiting a court hearing and potential extradition. There were 3 other British men arrested at the apartment alongside him.
We promised the kids some sweets, so we had to keep our promise.
Denise Solak from East London is one of them. He says he was an aid worker, not a terrorist. Their friend says he was helping Ain Davis and was a good man doing good work.
There was a friendship between Ain and a few other guys, and he had reached out to them after he became disillusioned with ISIS. They had told him that he could come and stay with them on the condition that he completely renounced ISIS, and he kept a low profile and stayed in the apartment.
Whatever happened is for the Turkish system to decide. Secret hearings involving a notorious suspect. Rohit Katru, News at 10, Istanbul.
While normal service in our political system seems to have been suspended, what currently passes for normal in the American presidential election continues apace. And for Hillary Clinton, there was some good news up to a point. The FBI said there is no need to bring criminal charges against her for using her private email account for official business, but it did say she had been extremely careless in the heat of the most bitter race for the White House in years. Quite a big call for the FBI.
She emerged from Air Force One flanked by the president, a woman who a few hours earlier had been both chastised by the FBI director and then given a gift by him that may have saved her historic bid for the Oval Office. For James Comey was withering about her use of a private email server while she was Secretary of State. But crucially, he concluded she should not face criminal charges.
As a result, although the Department of Justice makes final decisions on matters like this, we are expressing to Justice our view that no charges are appropriate in this case.
In going through the emails,
the central problem is that Mrs. Clinton was dealing with highly classified information on an email system that was not secure, something she and her advisors should certainly have known.
Any reasonable person in Secretary Clinton's position or in the position of those with whom she was corresponding about those matters should have known that an unclassified system was no place for that conversation.
This is my fight song. Such a sharp rebuke from the FBI will help Republicans characterize Mrs. Clinton as unfit for the White House. But to counter that, she has in President Obama a powerful surrogate who appeared to be relishing what's being called his third presidential campaign.
Hillary! Hillary! Hillary!
This one to elect his one-time rival as his successor.
And there has never been any man or woman more qualified for this office than Hillary Clinton. Ever.
Hillary's tactic is to mock Donald Trump and his conspiracy theory over where President Obama was born.
And Donald, if you're out there tweeting, it's Hawaii.
Hillary Clinton has to go to jail, okay? She has to go to jail.
But for Trump, who likes to refer to Mrs. Clinton as Crooked Hillary, the FBI investigation will help boost his claim that she is dishonest and lacks good judgment.
The FBI insists that the investigation here was entirely devoid of politics. But what flows from its conclusion is deeply political, allowing Donald Trump plenty of ammunition going forward, but also allowing Hillary Clinton to sidestep the one scandal that might have jeopardized her presidential ambitions. Robert Moore, News at 10, Washington.
When Wales fans set off for the Euros, most expected they'd be coming home after 10 days. Now, 3.5 weeks on, they are still out there in France, enjoying every unbelievable moment and hoping to still be there for the final on Sunday. Their team and their manager know they're the underdogs against Portugal in tomorrow night's semi-final. But that doesn't seem to bother the players in the slightest. They are revelling in it.
The stunning demolition of Belgium came at a cost. The Welsh manager, Chris Coleman, has to do without Ben Davies and arguably Wales player of the tournament so far, Aaron Ramsey. Both are suspended. But such is the squad's confidence, the captain believes whoever steps in will be ready.
Disappointed for Ben and Aaron, obviously. I think they've had an unbelievable tournament. But it gives an opportunity to two other guys to come in and experience the Euros. And as I've got no doubts that they'll come in and fill the slots, as good as the boys that have just gone out.
In their last game, they made the world's second-best ranked team look ordinary. It was a Celtic masterclass. Coming from behind to win comfortably tells you all you need to know about the much-talked-about spirit that binds this squad. They must now cast their spell over Portugal. Portugal might not have won a single game in normal time here, but they will still be favourites tomorrow, and not just because they're fielding one of the best players in the world.
We'll go into this game as the underdogs. We know that. Portugal have been in 7 semi-finals in big tournaments. They know what this is all about. This is our first one. We'll be the underdogs. No problem. Not a problem.
They're already guaranteed a place in Wales' Sporting Hall of Fame. Now, though, they stand on the brink of something even greater.
From the start, this game has been billed as Bale against Ronaldo. It may be that individuals might not be as vital as how each team copes with the enormity of the occasion tomorrow. And so far, Wales have handled everything that's been thrown at them.
The Red Choir has begun trickling into Lyon. In all, 25,000 are expected to make the journey, 10,000 without tickets. So there will be plenty of support here, while many millions will be watching at home. Among them, perhaps, the Prince of Wales, who wished the team well this afternoon.
Well, huge good luck is all I can say.
Have you been following the games?
Yes. I'm sure they've got a very good chance of beating Portugal. Everybody will be keeping their fingers crossed.
Tonight, the stage is empty and peaceful. For those who can perform on it amid the sound and fury tomorrow, a life-changing prize awaits in Paris at the weekend. Steve Scott, News at 10, Lyon.
Finally, at the end of last night's News at 10, we were waiting to find out whether NASA scientists had managed to slow a speeding spacecraft called Juno enough to direct it into Jupiter's orbit. It had travelled 1.8 billion miles over 5 years to get there. One of the scientists called it the hardest thing NASA had ever tried to do. Success promised insights into the origins of the solar system, including Earth, so the stakes were pretty high. Imagine the relief and the excitement then when the news came through this morning. By Jove, they'd done it. To tomorrow then, as we were reporting earlier, the Iraq Inquiry report by Sir John Chilcot will be published in the morning. In other news, the athlete Oscar Pistorius will find out his new sentence for murder, this time not manslaughter. He shot his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp at his home in South Africa 3 years ago. And, of course, the whole country will be anticipating the match of the competition, Wales against Portugal. I'll be here again tomorrow after that big match, but for now, from everyone here, good night.